I'm Jax Mackey, and this is my van build. I'm taking this once empty cargo truck and I'm converting it into a tiny living space. Last week was pretty stellar as I got the entire battery box completely wired. We got the batteries wired, we got the solar wired, we've got the 110 and the 12 volt panels wired, and we've got the inverter charger wired. We even got shore power connected up in there. So now's the time. We're going to walk through the systems, testing each setup, make sure everything's working properly, everything's set up the way I wanted it, and everything else, and we'll go from there. So let's get started on that. Okay, so to turn this system on, I've got an on-off switch here which connects the batteries to the system. That click was the inverter charger turning on. And then the other system they've got an on-off switch here is the solar. All right, so what I want to do first is I want to test the solar panels. I want to make sure each one of the solar panels is producing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove all but one of the fuses out of the fuse panel that are going to the solar charge controller, and one by one add those fuses back in to determine whether or not I've got watts coming from the solar panels themselves. So how I can measure that is through this app on the Victron app. So we'll turn on the solar and we'll see how many watts we're getting from the single solar panel. So I just got to turn the solar on with that switch, and then we'll wait and see how long this takes for it to update. Not too fast, or not too slow rather. So I don't know about shade or anything like that, but the main thing here is that I know that that panel is producing solar. We're producing energy from that panel. All right, so I'm going to tick through each one of these one by one and make sure that all 5 panels are producing. Okay, so I'm checking number 2 here, and I've got 0 watts. So that means I've got a connection problem, more than likely at the solar panel, so we'll have to go up there and take a look at that. And number 3, we're getting watts. And number 4, we're getting watts. And number 5. So one of the panels is not producing any watts, so we've got a connection problem we got to look at. All right, let's well, I got the panel free. Let's prop it up and see what we can see here. Those connections look pretty good. Positive, negative. Okay, let's just go down and check and see if we got anything. Okay, so I've got no watts yet. Okay, so now we're getting juice. Now we're getting juice. Okay, so what I did was I just took these apart and I plugged them in, without all of the fancy waterproofing, and I've got a connection, so I'm good. So however I had these assembled wasn't good enough, so I'm gonna have to take some more care when I reassemble these again, and then we'll test them again and make sure they're working before I put this back down and mount it again. Okay, perfect. All right, that's good. We got solar now. We've got solar now. We just recrimped the fittings and put them back together, and we're good. Now we've got 5 solar panels. All right, well, it seems like the inverter charger's gotten a little bit vocal. Not exactly sure why it's doing that, but I guess I'll have to make a couple of phone calls to find out. So Okay, so after talking it over with Battleborn, we've come to the conclusion that there was an issue. There was an over voltage on the inverter charger, which is causing some problems. So I've got to send it back and have them look at it. So I've already done that actually. I've taken the unit out, boxed it up, and sent it back. They're gonna have a look and have a gander, see what was up with it. Hopefully it's under warranty. That'll be good. So, but we can still test out the remainder of the 12 volt system. We just can't touch any of the 120 volt, obviously. So, with that said, let's just carry on. 12 volt system. The very first breaker on the panel is the main cabin lights, which covers this little exhaust fan. The accent lights above the cabinets. The panel backlights is for the 12 and 120 volt breaker panels. Then we got the main lights and the galley lights. Now someone has pointed out to me that these switch plates are probably upside down, which I'm pretty sure that they are. So we'll have to flip them around. But this is the main lights, and they are, you know, working really well. Now if we figure out how to, there we go. That's really dim. Yeah, so we'll have to flip those around. Now I don't have the accent lights complete yet, so we'll have to work on those. But the galley lights, those should work too. There we go. Galley lights are all lit up. So those are working well. So here we got our breaker panel. Two breaker panels, a 110 and a 120 volt breaker panel. Right now I've just got the main cabin lights turned on. That's it. We're going to go ahead and flip these light switches around. And so let me kill that real quick. Okay. Flipped over. Now let's try them again here. Okay. Perfect. Perfect. Nice. I like. Very, very nice. All right. Accent lights. These guys were a bugger. These guys were definitely a bugger. The red and the black on the little tab here is reversed. And of course, LEDs are polarity sensitive, so I had to reverse the red and the black up here in order for the lights to turn on. But we got it. Accent lights. There we go, man. Sweet. All right, now we're gonna go with the forward cabin lights. Now I am missing one circuit, and that is the toilet. I got a composting head that's gonna go in the shower here, and it has a 12 volt fan, which I'm gonna run. But the forward lights, I've got a switch right here above the cabinet, so we'll have light inside the cab over area. So that's fully lit. And then we have a light switch here, which is the shower light. So that's nice. So those work. Now, like I said, I'm going to have an outlet for the fan, the exhaust fan for the toilet mounted over there. So I'll have to wait and see how that works out. All right, next up on the 12-volt agenda is the air conditioner, which is basically the roof vent. I've got 2 roof vents, and those are both wired in. So we're going to go ahead and turn those guys on. Now I've got 2 remote controls. One is here, so we can turn this fan on. There we go. Okay, so on the remote, we can just hold it up by the fan here, and it automatically opens and turns on. Now, right now I've got this fan blowing in. You can see that on the remote there. It says air in. Fan speed's at 50%, and then must be a set temperature that it'll automatically turn on a certain temperature. So we'll have to play around with that. But right now the room temperature is 89 degrees. Now we can reverse this fan and we can blow it out, or we can blow it in and we can change the speed. So that works out pretty slick. So that's the one fan toward the back of the van, and then we've got one in the front, which I've got the remote right here. So, and that basically does the same thing. And there we go. Automatically opens and turns on, and this one here is blowing. See, this one here is blowing out 50%. Beautiful, works awesome. All right, now the next set here I think we're going to work on is these covers, which these are trim rings that go around the fans. We gotta cut them down the size. They are, way oversized, so we'll cut those down and that'll trim that out really nice. All right, so we've got the 12-volt exhaust fans working. Those are pretty slick, and now we're going to install these covers here that are going to clean up the whole installation of this. I haven't put these on yet because I wasn't sure if I was going to need to pull those fans out, double check wiring or anything like that. So that's why I waited. But now we can easily plop those guys in. So that's what we're going to do now. All right, so what I did to fit these guys, obviously these are way too deep to fit up in the space to accommodate thicker roofs and whatnot. But in order for me to figure out what I need here, is what I done is I shoved this up in here until it stopped, and I went ahead and made a mark right here. So that basically tells me how far I can insert this cover in here. So that's measured about 2 inches. So what I've done now is I've just transferred a mark from the inside here edge about 2 inches all the way around. So that's where I'll cut this at, and then we can stuff this up there and call her done. Go. Perfect. Okay, next up on the 12-volt panel, the test is the water pressure pump. And now I don't have any water in the system, so I can't turn it on and leave it on. The pump will just simply run and never shut off. Won't reach any sort of pressure. But once we test it, we'll be able to determine whether or not it works. And if it works, we can go ahead and continue with the filling of the water tanks once I get to that point. So here we go. Okay, I can hear the pump running. So that works out pretty well, so I don't have to go any further at the moment. But so then the next test here is the accessory 1 and accessory 2, which basically are those little USB ports. Accessory 1 is on this bench and accessory 2 is on that bench. All right, so this is super cool. This has got a watertight, waterproof or water resistant cover, dust proof and everything else that comes along there. And it does have an on-off switch. So we can turn this on, and then when we turn it on, we can see the battery voltage, which is 13.4. That's how much current battery power we have in the system. So that's actually pretty slick. So we should be able to plug this into my phone and get some power. And there we go. Charging away. Very, very cool. And there we go. Went ahead and turned on the accessory 2, and even with the cover on, you can see the voltage on the batteries, so that's pretty slick. And that's with the power on. Now we can, like I said, we can turn this off, and that'll turn off the power to the USB port. So we don't necessarily need those on all the time. I don't know how much draw these are with them on with just the light. Probably very, very minimal, but obviously we don't need to leave those on if we don't need to have them on. So there we go. That's pretty slick. All right, so as you can see, I've got the toilet set in place. Now eventually it's going to get mounted on top of this teak shower mat. I'm going to have to fit that in that spot and back it up tight against the wall. That way the toilet is off the floor of the shower, as well as being able to be fastened down so it doesn't move around. So one of the things I'm looking at here is where to run the plumbing for the vent. Now the vent here, we can mount this pretty much anywhere, but I've decided that I want to go up high with it, simply because it has a less chance for water to leak into that and into the wall and so on and so forth, so I can keep it up high out of the majority of the water if I do take a shower in here. Now what I got is this little vent cover, and this will mount on the outside of the van, and it's got a little screen inside, so that way no bugs and flies and whatever can get in there. And then 1.25 inch pipe, which will go through the wall, and it'll be a little part that sticks out that connects to. And then from there I've got a coupler, and I'm going to use this coupler to be able to actually epoxy this directly to the fiberglass shell of the van, so it doesn't move around. It's nice and solid. And then I've got a street L, which allows me to connect this hose to, and it'll come out of the wall like that, and then this hose will be able to connect to it fairly easily. Now I should be able to can clamp that with a hose clamp, but more than likely it'll stay there with no issue or no problem. So with this hose being up here, this gives me an opportunity. I can run that electrical wire, the 12-volt wire for the fan, alongside the hose. All right, so I've got this neat little fitting here that I fabricated, put together. A little street L, 1.25 street L, and a 1.25 coupling, and a couple of points of 1.25 pipe to fasten this together. Now this part was a supplied part from, or maybe it wasn't supplied, but it was part of the composting head. What I did was I just cut a hole in it and I turned it into a flange. That way there would be a nice finishing element on the inside of the shower. Now this is the outside section. I had to sand down this 1.25 inch a little bit for this to slide onto. There is a little bit of an issue outside, which because of the roundness of the vehicle and the curvature of where this comes out at, I'm going to have to tweak this just a little bit, but this part's a little bit long, so I can sand it off carefully to get just enough bite in here and get enough sealant in there to prevent any leakage. So basically how this fits in here is I've got the hole that goes through the wall, and I've got this fitting, and I got it cut out to fit nicely along the trim. And what I'll do is I'll seal that in there and throw a couple screws in it, and that'll be it. That'll be the vent for the composting head. All right, installed. Doesn't look too bad. That's what the outside looks like with the cover on. So okay, so I'm going to go ahead and modify this wooden bath mat to accommodate you know, the space, so I can push it back tight against that wall. This is what the toilet will sit on. I got to be mindful because I do have that sliding shower door, roll-up shower door that I got to fit in here yet too, so we got to look at that as well. Okay, so I've got the door, the roll-up door. It's pretty dusty. It's been hanging around in the shed there for a minute. So that looks like it'll work out with the dimensions that I need to cut it at to fit in between there anyways. So 32 and a half, 30 or 31 and a half, 31 3/8. So that's what I'll cut it as. And then we got to cope around. We got to cope around this here a little bit at the bottom to get that to fit, and then that'll just set right in there real nice. All right, that looks pretty good. Definitely I got a support underneath these, so I got to figure out what I'm going to do there. If I'm going to rip some oak and fasten up in there or what, but definitely that's going to work out pretty good though. Well, I miscalculated, or at least I didn't think enough ahead here, because this is going to interfere there. So that's not good. So I got a couple options. Either I can lift the door or trim that back. I'm not sure which will look better. Well, all right, if I turn the door around, this I think is the inside, because that's just the way the water will shed off the door. And if I put this edge on top of the lip there, which that'll be fine, and bring the door out flush with the edge of the wall there, and that'll leave me plenty of room down here at the bottom. So the only thing I'll have to do then is trim these supports here a little bit shorter so that this piece mounts to there. All right, trim those off. Took about an inch off of these, and now the door is, you know, set pretty good. It lines up pretty good on the bottom. That's a nice tight fit. It even matches the color really nice. And then to shut it, it's just hooks on itself like that, and there you have it. You've got a shower door. All right, so the oak, I got the oak. I got it cut already. It's just 1x2, so 1.5 by 3/4. We're only going to need 3 supports because the outside edges are going to be actually supported by the shower pan itself. So we're going to mount these on the underside. We'll screw up from the bottom. Solid. There we go. All right, so I think the shower is done. Actually, no, it's not done. Almost done. I got some caulking, a little bit of caulking to do. I went ahead and I installed, permanently installed this hatch. I got butyl tape all the way around the perimeter, so that's all nice and tidy. Of course, we got the light in there for the cab over. I went ahead and wired. I've got the toilet in this little white sheath here. Figured that would clean up that a little bit, make it not look so, you know, weird with a wire hanging there. So there's just that. That'll go all the way down to where the wire comes out for the toilet. I'll clean that up a little bit. So yeah, a little bit of caulking to do I gotta throw a coat of sealer on those oak legs on the bottom of the toilet, but otherwise that base is done and it's all ready to be going. I've got the little fan that's, of course, yeah, the fan is wired in and that's running, so that's a good thing. That's wired in off this other sub panel here. I've got this sub panel up here just for this very thing, so I've got a few more circuits up there that I can expand to if I need. But the shower door is in here. It's a little weird, but I suppose it's something you'll have to get used to. It's a little short on the head height. We've got this track runner that allows this roll-up door to track properly. So that hooks, it just hooks on this little flange here, and that's it. That's all that holds it. You got to be careful because it'll roll back pretty quick. But when you're in here, you just shut her just like that. There you go. Thank you very much for tuning in. Be sure to check out next week's video. And if you like the content, be sure to like and subscribe.